Hello and welcome to the Red Dragon Inn. God damn it.
See, that's Brad. Bram.
See, I told
Derek.
you I suck at starting, but once I start,
Tesla in a new body.
I really it was because I forgot to hit that. And all right, so now we're being real. Hello and welcome to the Red Dragon Inn. We are your hosts. I'm Brad.
Bram.
Derek.
And today, this is episode 2 of Across the Table, a follow-up to our last video. We're going to talk a little bit about Pathfinder 2 and the things to know before you actually switch over. This is some stuff that we edited out of the last video because we thought it would be best served to be an entirely its own video. There's a lot of stuff that, especially if you played D&D and other editions of Pathfinder, there's a lot of stuff that seems familiar at first. So it is a huge book. As you're reading through it, you might tend to kind of skim over a few sections and not realize that there's actually some important changes. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Attack of Opportunity. So Attack of Opportunity is something that you may recognize from back in 3.5, Pathfinder 1, 5th edition. It's very different in this. The fighter is actually the only character that starts with the Attack of Opportunity reaction in their repertoire, which this is something that's different from every other edition. Usually an Attack of Opportunity would be something that anybody can do with an attack. In this one, it is just a reaction for the fighter. Champions and barbarians have the option to learn the Attack of Opportunity as a feat at 6th level. So initially I was a little taken aback by that. I just want to see what your guys' thoughts are on that. What do you guys think?
It seems weird that it's such a late level. Like 6th level seems kind of like late in the game to be able to like react to someone attacking or like walking by to get that action.
Yeah, I mean,
at least for fighter those fighter-based classes.
I was surprised that at least the barbarian didn't also start with it, but
or at least maybe make it like by 2nd or 3rd level, if not like your 3rd level feat or something like that. But
it could be in there as a general feat. I have not memorized and read all the feats, but I don't think so.
I didn't see it when I was skimming through them, and it kind of makes sense for the wizard to not.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I can understand like the wizard and stuff not getting it because they're not going to be in melee combat usually, anyways. But I don't know. That's just one thing. Because when you're skimming, especially if you're just skimming, when you're looking through the reaction section, it lists the Attack of Opportunity. It explains how it works. But there's a sentence before it that it says this is the most common reaction, such as what the fighter gets. So if you're just glancing at it, you're going to be like, okay, attack of opportunity, that's a reaction, move on. But that's not necessarily the case. So that was one quick thing to mention. The next thing I wanted to talk about was initiative. Initiative in this is usually going to be rolled based on your perception, and your perception is based on your wisdom. So unlike other games, other editions, usually initiative has always been a dex-based thing. Now it still can be a dex-based thing in this. There's different, why don't you talk about that, Derek? Talk about some of the other ways you can use initiative.
Right. Well, one thing that I just going off what you said, it always makes sense because although dexterity allows you to react quickly, you should at least be able to see what you're reacting to. So perception technically, I guess thematically makes more sense. But ways you can use initiative in other ways is, say before combat starts, the thief is kind of sneaking into a flanking, like backstab type position. He can use his stealth skill as an initiative roll. If I'm playing for our campaign, if you watch us, I'm going to be running a barbarian that's actually diplomatic. It's just kind of a goof character. But if somebody says something and a fight's about to begin, I could maybe use my diplomacy skill as my initiative to try to say, hey, wait, let's try to...
Or conversely, your intimidation.
Or intimidation, yeah, exactly. But there's no limit to what skill. Basically, you would have to kind of justify what skill would apply.
Right, I mean, really, initiative can be anything in this game. It could just be you're trying to save somebody's life and the DM says, okay, roll medicine as your initiative. I mean, that's possible. As long as you can come up with a reason for it. And
I mean, 90% of the time it's probably going to be perception. But...
Right. And the whole party does not need to roll the same initiative. So it could be that, you're the barbarian, you're the rogue who's the stealth and sneaking up on someone. So maybe you're rolling stealth for initiative, but the rest of the party is going to still roll perception.
Right.
Because you're going to be the one who's acting when the enemy hasn't seen you yet or something like that. Another thing to note on initiative that's a little bit different, I think Bram has something to say on this, is the DM creature, the adversary, is going to win on a tie. So if after everybody rolls initiative, if I'm rolling, 3 goblins attacking the rest of the party, and I tie with a character, the DM's adversary goes first.
Yeah, dumb. I don't like that.
And
there should always be a tiebreaker. There should always be a tiebreaker.
I think it's kind of nice to see something go the DM's way for once. But usually it always favors the players. But is it really going to hurt that much? That
it depends on what you're trying to do, I guess.
Well, I suppose, one thing, usually if, the party, granted we have a large party, we have 6 people that are going to be playing with us, but even if it's a standard party of 4, if you're just fighting one creature, at least gives that one creature an advantage over a party of 4. So I could see it there definitely helping the DM, because sometimes, especially if it goes late or with a tie, you can have the creature half dead before it even gets to go do anything.
That's very true.
So it can,
oftentimes, even when you have the appropriate challenge rating creature that you're fighting, the party still demolishes it before it barely has a chance to go.
But I guess, in Bram's defense, I could see where if you're grouping it, if it's a large number of things and you're grouping it into sections where
that's specifically in the book, that if you do a grouping like that, it can make the combat much easier and faster. So if it is 6 orcs and I group them as one and they tie with the person who goes first, and then now all 6 orcs get to act first, that could maybe be a problem, but I don't know. We'll see when we play. I don't think it's going to be a huge problem, but
I don't see it being a problem. I just like the idea. I just like the idea of there should be a tiebreaker. It shouldn't just be they always go first on a tie.
It used to just go off of Dex. If it becomes a problem, you could house rule that it goes off of perception.
Oh, for sure.
Just if there's a tie, then perception goes first. And if 2 players tie, like always, they can choose who goes first. And that's not based off of anything other than what the players want to do, which is good. It's not necessarily fixed on Dex like it used to be. Some of the other stuff we were going to talk about is crits. You probably already know this if you watched anything else about Pathfinder, because it's been a topic I've seen mentioned a lot, is that a natural 20 is not always going to be a crit, and a natural 1 is not always going to be a fumble. A crit success is when you beat the DC by 10, and a crit failure would be, missing the DC by 10.
Which also lets you hit creatures and crit them on a number that's not 20, which is also really useful. That's a really cool mechanic.
I really, really like that. It still means that usually a nat 20 is going to be a crit. Usually a nat 1 is going to be a fumble, but not always. But I do like it a lot. I think that's going to be one of the. It might be a little hard to remember at first, but it's going to be one of the things that I think is going to add some flavor to the game. It's going to be neat,
and it gives you a heads up that if you roll a nat 20 and it's not a crit, you should start making your second character sheet.
Right.
If you fail by 20 or by 10, it's a crit fail. Does that mean, let's say you're trying to pick a lock or do something that's just way beyond your ability? You could potentially crit fail even at a 20 if the DC is that high for it.
Is 40 and you have a plus 10 and you roll a nat 20, then technically that's still a crit fail because you failed by 10.
You snap your pick locks.
Yeah,
that's gonna be crazy. That would make interesting, scenes.
Which I guess I sort of like too, because it represents something that should be practical, like impossible. if you didn't have that rule, you're still saying 1 out of 20 times you will get that lock when it's supposed to be practically impossible to where
a beginner
level,
commoner with a lock pick could technically pick any lock if they roll a 20 in previous editions of
I mean,
the game.
And as you level up, you'll be able to do stuff like that, but especially at lower levels, that that makes sense. That a I mean, that's always been a thing that people argue, is that like in 5e you can't technically crit success a skill,
right.
Whereas just because you rolled a 20 on your diplomacy doesn't mean the dragon joins your party and he's your best friend now.
There's just a hint of realism in it now.
But yeah, now there's an actual mechanic that kind of addresses that. Like no, that's not necessarily going to happen.
If you watch us on stream, you'll hear us cheer every time we get a 20. Still, can promise you that.
I'm going to set the DC so high that 20s just never work.
We're still going to cheer.
Taking away all your fun.
It's ingrained in our brains.
All right. That was kind of just the initial things I wanted to talk about with skimming. Some of the stuff is the same, like flanking, for example. Back to 3.5 original stuff, still the same. Opposite corners are, opposite of a creature. They're going to be treated as flat-footed. That's one thing. These are all sections that I skimmed at first, so that's why I'm going back, and that's kind of why we're talking about these. Movement, same as 4th edition style D&D. So diagonals are 5, then 10, then then they alternate. All right, so next we're going to talk about the Bestiary and some of the monsters that have changed for Pathfinder, so that if you're looking for them, you might find them under a different name, similar, but not necessarily exactly the same as what they were in D&D.
Yeah, just like some basic, we were just kind of going through and we just compared the Bestiary to the monster manual. Like treants are now called arboreals, so don't go to the T's looking for them. You have to go to the A's. Driders are now considered flesh warped. There's a couple different versions of flesh warped creatures.
Flesh warped things.
Although drow are still drow, but they're not the drow of Menzerbranson because we're in a we're not in Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, drow in Pathfinder 2 are kind of, it seems like most of them were surface elves that kind of got cast to the it's not called the Underdark. They really don't even talk about Underdark at all in Pathfinder. They just say subterranean. So I'm sure there'll be another book on that. But yeah, drows are a little different in their mythology as well.
No, some of them are also still similar. Like the Shambling Mound is just called the Shambler now. So I mean, it's still going to be pretty much right in the same. Rakshasa is now the Raja. So it's really.
I think it's
similar.
the Raja Rakshasa. Or something
yeah,
like
it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The Ankeg is called the Ankthra now, or something like that. So there's a lot that are still similar. Sturges are now called Bloodseekers. So again, entirely different part of the book. Phase spiders or ether spiders. Ettercaps or web lurkers.
And again, they're not necessarily all identical, but they're similar
they're
enough
pretty
in
much
appearance
similar,
and abilities that's going to be what you want to use.
Yeah. Like probably the closest thing, like the Death Knight would be the Grave Knight. They're similar, but they're not the same. But it's the closest thing that we could find.
Right, and again, there's another Bestiary coming out for Pathfinder. I mean, obviously there was 6 in Pathfinder 1, so I imagine we're going to have a bunch of them, and a lot of this stuff could show up in the next one. But for right now,
but yeah, that's just kind of some. You have to kind of browse through the way you're used to seeing them. They're now called different things. Also, they've taken certain things and grouped them into groups, kind of like you always had your hags and they would list them. They've kind of combined other things as well into groups, so you're gonna have to pay attention to that.
For instance, the invisible stalkers in the elemental section.
An invisible stalker is now in the air elemental section. So there's like little things like that you're going to have to pay attention to.
But there is still a list of just monsters by name.
Right, so in the index.
So you can flip to them in that.
But again, if you didn't know, if you were looking for the Bahir, it's now called like the Linorm. So if you go to the index and you're trying to find Bahir,
it's not
right.
So you're going to have to kind of browse through it, kind of like what Brad was saying with the rule book. Now you don't have to obviously read the entire Bestiary,
but you should.
Bestiary. It's Beastiary.
Yes, we've apparently been pronouncing it wrong this whole time. Google even told us that it is indeed pronounced as it's spelled, like Bestiary.
It's not full of bests.
Bestiary.
It's not full of bests.
But
full of beasts.
We've usually called it the Beastiary, and for that, I guess our English failed us. Cause,
I mean, that is the way it's spelled. Technically, that is the way it's spelled.
Yeah.
I think our common has failed us.
Yeah, we just failed that roll, apparently.
Anything you two want to add?
Monster Manuel. That's it.
I think for our next video, we're going to talk about things that iconic D&D monsters that are not part of Pathfinder, never have been. I know that they have shown up in the PSRD, the D20,
Right.
like fan made one.
Also, there is a errata document coming out soon. We may cover some of that stuff when that comes out, because from what I've seen so far, there's actually quite a few rule changes. Nothing huge, but some stuff that needs to be talked about.
All right.
So, anything else you guys want to add?
I think that's it for this video.
Bram, take us out.
TRDIU later, YouTube. Done.
We really need an outro.
Don't put that in.
You gotta have that cool